Twisted Revenge. Every story bends before it breaks.
My name is Mira Carter, and I never thought I'd be the kind of person who gets kicked out of a wedding, especially not one where I was family. I wasn't just another guest. I was Emily's cousin, the girl who used to share bunk beds with her, who braided her hair the night before prom, who held her hand when she found out her dad had cheated. But apparently, none of that mattered anymore, because when your life doesn't sparkle, you become invisible in theirs. Emily was getting married. Not just any wedding, this was the wedding. A weekend-long celebration at a five-star vineyard in Napa, featured in Bridal Elite magazine, sponsored by a champagne brand I couldn't even pronounce. She sent me an invite with golden cursive and a wax seal. Inside, it read formal attire, gold and cream theme, dress to dazzle, dazzle. I had exactly 2 dresses in my closet, and one of them still had a ketchup stain from a friend's baby shower. But the other, it was my mom's. Ivory satin, with soft golden embroidery near the hem, delicate, worn once, years ago, at her final gala before she passed. I thought it was perfect, elegant, nostalgic, personal. Maybe not dazzling, but real. I arrived a little early, walking past Rolls-Royces and Lamborghinis with my old Honda Civic. The valet hesitated like he wasn't sure if I was lost. I smiled. Nope. I belong here. But that feeling didn't last. Inside the reception hall, everything shimmered in gold. Crystal chandeliers, champagne towers, women dressed like movie stars, men in tuxedos that probably cost more than my rent. I felt quiet, but not out of place. Until they spotted me. Emily's mother, my Aunt Veronica, was standing by the entrance, inspecting guests like a casting director. She turned to me, and her face dropped. "Mira," she said, tilting her head like she smelled something off. "What exactly are you wearing?" I looked down. "It's vintage, my mom's dress." She wore it at, oh, she interrupted. "That explains it. We said gold, dear, not beige. It's embroidered with gold," I replied softly. Veronica blinked. "Sweetheart, this wedding is going to be televised. We can't have anyone looking dull." Then came the final blow. From behind her, walked up the maid of honor Tasha, Emily's new best friend, the one she met in L.A., who called me small-town chic with a fake smile. Tasha leaned in and said, loud enough for others to hear, "She looks like she's auditioning for a period drama." Laughter from strangers. And then Emily walked in. She looked stunning. Gold mermaid gown, veil like starlight. She saw me, and instead of smiling, her lips curled into something else. "Mira," she said, "I think you misunderstood the vibe." I blinked. "Emily, it's Mom's dress." And she said it. The sentence that cracked me open. Maybe your mom's taste just isn't good enough for this wedding. Silence. From me. From the air itself. The words fell like broken glass. I could have screamed. I could have reminded her how my mom took her in when her parents fought. How she once called my mom her second mother. But I didn't. I just smiled. A calm, sharp smile. And I walked out. No tantrum. No tears. Just heels on marble. And silence that cut deeper than any slap. No one followed me. No one asked me to stay. Outside, I sat in my car for 10 minutes, not moving, just breathing. I watched through the window as cameras started rolling inside. People posed. Emily laughed. I wasn't a part of it anymore. Maybe I never really was. I started the engine, but as I drove away, one thought repeated in my head like a heartbeat. Okay, let's play this your way. Because the thing about being dismissed is that it gives you space to plan, to create, to turn your silence into something louder than their spotlight. I didn't cry on the drive home, not once. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because the wound was already old. They'd just reopened it. You see, I've always been the background girl. The extra in other people's spotlight, the quiet one in family photos, the nice cousin who listens, but never gets asked how she's doing. At some point, you start thinking you deserve it, that being forgotten is just your natural place in the script. But something shifted that day, the day they kicked me out like a blemish on their perfect golden canvas. They didn't just reject my dress. They erased my history. They looked me in the eye and told me I didn't belong in the memory they were curating. And that gave me clarity sharper than any glass slipper. I turned my phone off that weekend, deleted the wedding reminders, didn't even open the group chats. But Monday morning, I sat at my laptop, opened a blank script, and typed the first words. She was the girl no one noticed until she rewrote the story. She rewrote. I didn't name her Emily. I wasn't that petty. Instead, I created Evelyn Rain beautiful, charming, ruthless beneath the surface. And then I created Nina, her cousin, a woman dismissed, discarded, underestimated. Just like me. But unlike me, Nina wouldn't stay quiet forever. The words came like thunder. By Wednesday, I had 10 pages. By Friday, I had a pilot, and the best part, I didn't write it as revenge. I wrote it as truth. Because every insult they tossed at me, every time I was told I wasn't glamorous enough, every wedding photo they cropped me out of, all of it became dialogue, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. But here's what no one in that golden wedding knew. By day, I was Mira Carter, freelancer, ghostwriter. By night, I was under exclusive NDA with Blackstone Studios, helping pitch a brand new TV show for their fall lineup. I was the ghost behind other people's words until now, until this. I packaged the pilot, wrote the series Bible, wove in emotional arcs, betrayal, legacy, female rage. Every ounce of pain I ever swallowed in silence was now ink. When I submitted the pitch to the exec team at Blackstone, I expected a 2-week wait. They called me the next day. Is this based on a true story? The woman asked. I smiled through the phone. Parts of it, I said. The rest is just what happens when you push the quiet girl too far. They greenlit it. 6 episodes. Streaming prime slot. I didn't scream, didn't dance. I just sat there, staring at my name in the contract. Creator Mira Carter. Not ghost, not assistant, not +1. Creator. And that's when I opened Instagram. Just curiosity, I told myself. But really, I wanted to see what I'd been shut out of. Photos flooded the feed. Emily in her gown, drenched in gold, Tasha laughing over champagne, the caption, a golden union, a perfect day, surrounded by the people who matter most. Funny, I wasn't there. Not just physically, they had literally photoshopped me out of one of the pre-wedding brunch pictures. You could see where my arm had been. Crooked edges, bad blending. It would have been laughable if it hadn't felt like erasure. That's when I stopped pretending I didn't care. They didn't just leave me out. They rewrote me. And now I would write back, but not with hate, not with tabloid gossip or viral threads. No, with craft, with story, with the kind of truth that burns slower but deeper. I sent Blackstone my second draft with one specific note. I'd like Nina to be a screenwriter, one who finally gets to tell her own story. They loved it. The show went into pre-production, casting, location scouts, concept art. It all moved like a dream, and through it all, I said nothing. No dramatic Facebook post, no watch out world status, just silence. Because silence, I'd learned, wasn't weakness, it was preparation. And one morning, while sipping coffee in my secondhand robe, I got an email trailer drop scheduled for September 12th, my birthday. How poetic. The subject line, The Golden Lie official teaser launch. I opened the attachment, watched the minute-long teaser, and at the very end, fading into black. One final frame created by Mira Carter. I didn't cry, but for the first time in my life, I felt seen. They buried me at that wedding. But they forgot something. I was still breathing. And worse for them, I'd learned how to write. I didn't plan the timing. but fate has a funny sense of irony. The teaser for The Golden Lie dropped 1 week after Emily's wedding, 7 days after she kicked me out in front of 100 strangers, 6 days after her perfect day went viral, and exactly 5 days before she boarded a plane for her honeymoon in Santorini. I hadn't spoken to her since that afternoon. She hadn't reached out. No text, no sorry things got weird. Things. Just silence. But the world. The world was about to get loud. The trailer went live at 10 a.m. By 10:03, my inbox exploded. By 10:08, the hashtag The Golden Lie was trending at number 5 on Twitter. By 11:00, it was number 1. And by noon, I was getting calls I never expected. Mira. My agent breathed into the phone. Are you seeing this? But hearing it from someone else made it real. The teaser was just 60 seconds, but it hit like a slow-moving thunderstorm. A voiceover said, "In a world gilded in gold, what's the price of pretending everything's perfect?" The screen flashed scenes, a lavish wedding, fake smiles, a cousin in a vintage dress. A brutal whisper, "You don't belong here." Then a final shot, a woman sitting at a typewriter, typing her truth, blackout. Then the words, "Created by Mira Carter." It wasn't loud, it wasn't vengeful, but it was sharp, and it cut clean. I didn't tag anyone, didn't send the trailer to family, I just let it exist, let it breathe. Because real truth doesn't need a spotlight, it finds its own stage. Around 3 p.m., my phone buzzed, an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to. It was Tasha, the maid of honor, the girl who laughed at my mother's dress. "Hey, Mira." Her voice was thin, cautious. I stayed silent. She cleared her throat. "So, that trailer, that new show, that's not, like, based on us, is it?" I smiled into the silence, then said, "Funny how people always assume stories are about them, when they recognize the guilt." Click. She hung up. I didn't even blink. I went for a walk that night. Needed air. Distance. Stillness. But my phone kept buzzing in my pocket. Old classmates. Former co-workers. People I hadn't heard from in years. Suddenly, I was inspiring. Bold. A genius. Ironic. How silence earns you nothing until it becomes a story. And Emily. She was still radio silent. Until the internet connected the dots. Someone found an old photo of us together. At a bridal expo, I was in the background, holding coffee. She was mid-laugh. And someone posted a side-by-side of that image, with a still from the trailer. Same pose, same setting. Only the actress was holding tea, not coffee. That post got 2.3 million views in a day. Then came the theories, Reddit threads, TikTok breakdowns. Did she base The Golden Lie on her own cousin's wedding? No comment from me. None needed. Emily posted a honeymoon photo the next morning, smiling with a cocktail, #GoldenGirl. But the comments had changed. "Isn't this the wedding that inspired the Golden Lie girl? You okay?" That show exposed some serious behavior. Respect to the cousin who walked out. Icon. She deleted the post within the hour. And finally, the message came from her. A short text. 5 words. "We need to talk. Please." I stared at it, didn't reply at it. What would I even say? "Oh, hey, sorry your fantasy got fact-checked. Sorry I didn't stay quiet in the corner you shoved me into." Nope. Let her sit with the silence this time. Because silence is where I built this empire. That night. The studio arranged a live interview. I almost declined. But then I thought, no. Let her see it. Let them all see me. Not angry, not broken, but whole. I wore a black suit, minimal makeup, no gold. Just truth. The host smiled at me across the studio lights. "So Mira," she said, "your new series is creating waves. People say it's brutally honest, personal. How much of it is really you?" I looked into the camera, straight into the lens, as if it were a mirror, And I said, it's not about revenge, it's about reclaiming space. Sometimes, we spend our lives shrinking ourselves to fit into rooms that never deserved us. This series, it's just me standing tall in my own story. The clip went viral. 12 million views in 48 hours. Retweeted by screenwriters, producers, activists, shared in college writing workshops. Emily didn't message me again. She didn't have to. I knew she saw it. I knew they all did. Because for the first time in my life, I was the one everyone was watching. And not for what I wore, not for how I looked, but for what I said and how I said it. They kicked me out of a wedding, but they gave me something far greater, a stage, a spotlight, and the freedom to speak not louder, but deeper. Fame has a funny smell. At first, it's sweet compliments, interviews, strangers calling you a voice of the generation, but then it starts to rot. People dig, people speculate, and people who once ignored you suddenly feel threatened. 2 weeks after the interview aired, I received a letter, thick envelope, expensive stationery, the Monroe and Tate legal watermark across the top. I already knew what it was. I didn't flinch. Inside, a cease and desist from Emily, or rather her lawyer fiancé, acting on her behalf. The letter accused me of defamation, character exploitation, and malicious intent to profit from private family events. They demanded I pull the show, issue a public apology, and admit that The Golden Lie was a fictional work loosely inspired by imaginary events. I read it once, then twice, and I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was desperate. Emily, the girl who once mocked my silence, now trembling because I used my voice. She didn't get it. This wasn't petty revenge. It was justice. Slow, silent, legal. I didn't write her back. Instead, I forwarded the letter to my legal team. My producer CC'd 3 executives. Within 24 hours, they issued our response, sharp, elegant, merciless. We attached a 150-page copyright registration, dated 6 months prior to her wedding, complete with character breakdowns, alternate names, and time-stamped drafts logged with the WGA. We also included a comparative analysis. How the fictional Evelyn Rain diverged dramatically from any real-life counterpart, including appearance, backstory, motivations. The final page simply read, "Our client's work is protected by law. Any further attempts to silence her will be treated as harassment." They went quiet after that, but the internet didn't. Because 2 days later, Buzzline dropped an article titled, "Is the Golden Lie based on a real wedding inside the family feud behind TV's hottest drama?" They didn't name names, but the dots weren't hard to connect. Fans had already done most of the work. They found archived photos, old tweets, clips of the wedding livestream. Including the moment I was escorted out, someone posted it to TikTok, captioned, "The woman they erased is now the one writing the script." It had 8.4 million views in 24 hours. And the comments brutal. She kicked her cousin out over a dress. No wonder the show hit so hard it's real pain. She thought she was the main character. Turns out, the writer was. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. But Emily. She started bleeding followers. Sponsorships paused their collaborations. One jewelry brand pulled their bridal line from her Instagram entirely. I heard through a mutual cousin that she'd started spiraling. She claimed I ruined her life, that I was obsessed. But obsession isn't silent. Obsession screams. I had never screamed. I had simply written. A month later, I was invited to speak at the Women in Media Summit in New York. I almost declined until I saw the theme reclaiming the narrative. So I said yes. I stood on stage in front of 800 women, all of them creators, dreamers, fighters. And I told them the truth. I didn't set out to hurt anyone. I said, I just got tired of erasing myself so others could feel bigger. The applause was quiet at first, then swelling, then a standing ovation. Backstage, a woman approached me. Mid-40s, sharp suit, sharper eyes. "I'm from Artemis Media Group," she said. "We'd like to acquire the international rights to your series, and offer you a development deal. Just like that, one door shut and another exploded open. Emily tried to end my story with a cease and desist, but I had already copyrighted my existence. She played the game of image. I played the game of narrative. And narrative always wins in the long run. Because people forget pretty weddings, but they remember stories. They remember truth. And they remember the woman who dared to write herself back in. Emily always wanted a perfect ending, the fairy tale, the kind of story people would talk about for years. And she got it, just not the way she imagined. Because now, when people talk about her wedding, they don't mention the flowers, or the champagne towers, or her dress made of hand-stitched gold. They mention the scene, the show, the woman in the vintage gown who walked away and wrote everything down. The Golden Lie wasn't just a hit, it was a movement. It swept through college classrooms, screenwriting panels, online forums. Everywhere I looked, people were dissecting the dialogue, quoting Nina's monologues, wearing shirts that said she left quietly, then wrote louder than them all. One fan mailed me a pen dipped in gold paint, with a note, "This isn't revenge, it's resurrection." And in that moment, I knew I wasn't the same girl they mocked outside the ballroom. I had become something else. Not a character, not a headline, not a side note. I had become a story that wrote itself free. On the 1-year anniversary of the wedding, something strange happened. I received a formal invitation. Gold embossed again, wax seal, handwritten note. Emily and Luke's first anniversary legacy gala. A night to honor love, charity, and unforgettable stories. The irony was too rich. I almost tossed it, almost. But then something in me paused. Not anger, not bitterness, just clarity. So I didn't RSVP, I didn't even show up. But I did send a gift, a single copy of the Season 2 script, wrapped in plain brown paper. No note. I heard from someone at the gala that she opened it, saw the title page, Episode 1, the rewrite, and left early. It didn't matter. The next day, I flew to Los Angeles to accept my Screenwriter of the Year award. I walked across that stage in silence. No grand speech, just one line. I was asked once how much of the story was real. I say, enough to burn, and more than enough to build. They stood for that one. And as the applause filled the room, I thought of my mother's dress. The one they said wasn't good enough. I had it restored last month. Not to wear, but to frame. It hangs in my study now, a silent witness to everything they tried to erase. And when I pass it, I remember the girl who stood in a marble hallway, humiliated, and chose to walk away instead of scream. That girl didn't disappear. She evolved. She learned that some rooms are too small for the stories we carry. And that silence, when wielded right, is the sharpest instrument of all. Emily never apologized. I never asked her to. Because closure didn't come from her regret. It came from my rewrite. It came from every woman who messaged me saying I saw myself in Nina. I never said anything. But now I think I might. You gave me a way to own what happened. They gave me more than applause. They gave me legacy. And legacy, it doesn't wear gold, it writes in ink. The final scene of Season 2 ends not with a wedding, but with a woman in a black dress standing at a typewriter. Behind her, a gala rages on. Laughter, flashing lights, but she doesn't turn to it. She types one final line. They told me I didn't belong in their story, so I built my own blackout, fade to credits.